Boys and girls, welcome back. I'm Mrs. Notton, and I'm an HISD teacher at River Oaks Elementary. And I'm so excited to be meeting with you guys once again. It has been several weeks of school, and I hope that you are enjoying reading and writing and listening to great and amazing stories. I know that you are learning so much, and your brain has been filled with so many amazing things. And I'm excited that you're here today to review some of those amazing things. Let's go over our objective for today. That's a great way to get our brain ready for what we're going to learn. Let me go ahead and show you what our objective is. So today, readers, our objective says, I will be able to describe the characters and the setting in the story. And I already know, boys and girls, that you have practiced that with all of the great and amazing books the last few weeks. We are going to be reviewing who the characters are and the setting where the story takes place today in our reading. But first, friends, I wanted to talk to you about fairy tales. Tell me if you've ever heard of a fairy tale. Yes, I know you have heard of a fairy tale before. Yes, you are right. Cinderella is a fairy tale. Sleeping Beauty is a fairy tale. And you are right. A fairy tale is a type of story. And a fairy tale, boys and girls, is a type of folk tale with magical characters, places, or events. So today we're just going to briefly talk about what a fairy tale is. Boys and girls, a fairy tale is completely made up. It is not a true story. It's not even really a realistic fictional story. This, friends, is just a fun, made-up story about magical characters, magical places, and events. And that goes along perfectly with characters and setting. So before we discuss who are fairy tale characters and where are fairy tale places, let's review what are characters and settings. And let's take a look at that. So here I have our characters and setting. Now, friends, as I'm reading a book, a character are the people, animal, and creatures in a story. Can you give me some examples of people, animals, and creatures in a story? Yes, people like you and me can be characters in a story. Animals like Pete the cat and Skippy John Jones and Pigeon and Piggy and Elephant are animals in a story. Those are characters in a story. What about creatures? Aliens and Martians, those are creatures in a story. Very good. I'm wondering, have you read some stories with people like you and me, and animals like Pete the cat, or animals like dogs and bears? I bet you have read some stories with those types of characters. And the setting, friends, please remind me what the setting is. You took a look. When and where a story takes place. This is an important part of the story, friends, because the setting tells where that character is. and when that character is there, in the daytime, in the nighttime, in the winter, in the spring. That is all included in the setting. The characters go on adventures, and where they go is the setting. It's when and where the story takes place. So let's go back to fairy tales for just a moment, because I wanted to talk to you about what fairy tales are. So let's go back to fairy tales. Fairy tales are a type of folk tale with magical characters, and I'm going to underline that word, characters, places or events. And places, friends, are those settings. So let's think about a fairy tale. A fairy tale is completely made up. It's magical. And we got some examples. Cinderella is a fairy tale. Jack and the Beanstalk is a fairy tale. Goldilocks and the Three Bears is a fairy tale. And the Gingerbread Man is a fairy tale. So help me, friends. What are some sorts of fairy tale characters? Let's think. If those are all examples of fairy tales, what are some fairy tale characters that you can think of? All right. So if you're thinking of like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, or if you're thinking of Cinderella, or if you're thinking of Jack and the Beanstalk, some of those characters are fairies. Okay, some of those characters are witches. Some of those characters are giants, like James and the giant Peach, and what I mentioned was Jack and the Beanstalk is a giant. Fairies, witches, giants. If I'm thinking of Cinderella, or if I'm thinking of Snow White, they have kings and queens. These, boys and girls, are examples of fairy tale characters. We know that characters are the people, animals, or creatures in a story. And specifically in a fairy tale are fairies, witches, giants, kings, and queens. There are many more. Can you think of some more? Let's see if we can squeeze that in. Talking animals. Those are certainly characters in a fairy tale. Talking. That's not real. It is make-believe. So let's think of some places, the setting in a fairy tale, when and where a story takes place. In a fairy tale specifically, friends, where are some of those places? Let's think. Good job. I heard castles. I heard enchanted forest. Okay. Castles and forests that are enchanted. Very cool. Places that are magical are fairy tale places. And I am going to put magical. This is where people and animals might fly. This is where people and animals might create spells or wizards or some sort of thing that normal people or animals can do. So I want you to be a fairy tale detective. You are going to be a fairy tale detective, and you're going to see if you can detect a fairy tale. Remember that fairy tales are a type of folk tale with magical characters, places, and events. So if you detect some castles, an enchanted forest, or talking animals as characters, or fairies and witches and giants and kings and queens, then there's a good chance, friends, that that is a fairy tale. So you are going to be fairy tale detectives, and you're going to see if you can find some fairy tales in your reading today and every day. So, but friends, our main objective today is characters and setting. And while we're talking about fairy tales, I have not chosen a fairy tale. I have chose just a regular fictional story. Fictional, remember, means that it is not real, because this particular story has talking fish, but it is not a fairy tale. It is not magical. So this story is just a fictional story. And in this story, we're going to talk about the characters and the setting in the stories and the decisions that the characters, and in this story, our fish, make in the story. But I don't want you to forget, friends, even though this is not a fairy tale, that fairy tales are a folk tale with magical characters, places, or events. The story that I've chosen today, friends, we are just going to read and look at the characters and setting. It's not a fairy tale, but it is a great story. So let's take a look at that. Now, friends, you might recognize this story. We have read it before. Gobi's noisy best friend. And I have told my readers that it is important to reread stories. Even though we've read a story before, does not mean I can't read it again. I know I have my favorite books and I read them over and over again, and I always learn something a little bit different than the time before. So even though we've read this story before, I want us to keep in mind that we can read stories over and over again. So while we're reading Gobi's nosy best friend, we are going to be looking for characters and setting. Now, friends, remember that a character is a person, animal, or creature in the story. And I'm already noticing something. Who do you think the characters are? Sure, Gobi. He is a character. And I'm thinking that this is him. And I'm thinking that this is his noisy best friend. From the title, we don't know what his noisy best friend's name is. But why do you suppose that I think that's his noisy best friend? Yeah, I'm using those clues. I'm being a detective. I'm using the illustrator's work, and I see those loud snaps, those loud claws, and I'm predicting that that is probably his noisy best friend. But I have to read to find that out. So we're going to read to find out who is Gobi's noisy best friend, and we're going to listen to hear if we can identify the characters and the setting in the story. Well, let's get started for Gobi's noisy best friend. Gobi and Snap lived deep down in the blue ocean. They were best friends, but they looked so different from each other. Friends, I know that I have some friends that don't look like me. And that's okay. We don't all have to look the same. It's important to be different. And in this story, they are two different friends. They don't look alike. I also see a little clue. Friends, remember, the setting is when and where the story takes place. Can you give me a hint of where the story takes place? Let's read that again. Goby and Snap lived deep down in the blue ocean. Tell me where it is. Tell me where they are and where this story takes place. You're right. Deep down in the blue ocean. Friends, right away, in a snap, you have figured out the setting in the story. Well, let's stop and let's write that down. Here, I have made a chart, and this chart says character settings and character action. And I already know that Goby is one of the characters. And I've also been introduced to his friend. Do you remember his name? Snap. He's a noisy best friend. And already, friends, the author has given me a huge clue of where this takes place. It takes place in deep down in the blue ocean. The author gave me a huge clue and told me where it takes place. Let's keep reading since we already have our character and setting. That was only the first page. We have to keep reading to figure out if that is going to be the same. Let's do that. Let's go back to our story and figure out if it stays the same characters and the same setting. Goby was a fish with 7 fins and no legs. He had very powerful eyes. Snap was a pistol shrimp with many legs. She had big, noisy claws, but she could not see very well. Here are some character traits. External character traits: 7 fins, no legs. External character trait: powerful eyes. That's Goby. Can you give me the external character traits of Snap? Use the words to help you. You're right. External means what it looks like, and Snap is a pistol shrimp, but had not very good eyes and big, noisy claws. Those are external traits about these two characters. And remember, boys and girls, external means what you look like long black hair, or a girl or a boy. These two best friends are fish. One with 7 fins and no legs and powerful eyes. One with many legs with big noisy claws. Those are external traits. So let's keep going. These are still our characters. Click, click, clickety clack. Oh no, what a racket. The noise from Snap's claws scared away many animals in the ocean. Snap's eyes were weak, so she often got lost in the dark ocean. Click, click, clickety clack. Oh no, oh, what a racket. Don't worry, her best friend Goby was always nearby to take her home. We're still in the deep down blue ocean, and we still have Snap and Goby. Snap shared her cozy burrow home with Goby. She clawed away any sand that fell into the burrow. Click, click, clickety clack. Oh, what a racket! Their home was always clean and tidy. It's a little frustrated and annoyed. Let's keep reading. One day, Goby went for a swim on his own. No more loud clickety clacks, he said. Do I really need such a noisy best friend? He wondered. Oh, when we last spoke about this book, we talked about problem and solution. And here, our friend Goby has a little bit of a problem. He's not sure if he wants a noisy best friend. Suddenly, Goby spotted two bright eyes in front of him. It was a big, hungry sea bass fish. Time for a Goby fish sandwich, said the sea bass. It swam closer. This is a new character. I'm going to write this new character down, friends, because even though this character is a scary character, it is a character. So let's write them down. So we already have Goby and we already have Snap, but now we have a big, hungry sea bass. And friends, my setting still has not changed. They are even deeper down in the blue ocean because it is very, very dark. It's kind of getting a little scary. Let's keep reading to see if we have any other characters. Because right now we have 3 characters. And let's see if we have any more as we keep reading. Goby closed his eyes, shivering with fright. Click, click, clickety clack. Oh, what a racket. What a terrible noise. What is that terrible noise? Asked the sea bass. Friends, sometimes if you're reading incorrectly and it doesn't look right or sound right, you can always reread it. If it doesn't look right, if it doesn't sound right, reread it, just like Miss Notton did. What is that terrible noise? Asked the sea bass. It was Snap. Click, click, clickety clack. Clickety clackety. Oh, what a racket. It was too loud for the sea bass. It swam far, far away. Phew. Goby hugged Snap. What would he do without his noisy best friend? And there is the end of the story. We've talked and reviewed about a lot of things from this story. When we originally read this story, we talked about problem and solution. But before we figure out problem and solution, friends, we have to first know the characters in the story. And we now know that the characters were Goby, Snap, and the sea bass. And those stayed the 3 characters. They had a couple of other fish come in and out, but they weren't mainly in the story. And then, of course, our setting did not change. They didn't go anywhere else. They're fish. And even though they're talking fish, they were still fish. And those fish lived in the deep blue ocean. So that, friends, was our character and our setting. The last time we spoke about this book, we talked about the problem. The problem is Goby was not sure if he wanted to keep his noisy best friend. And in the end, he realized that it was probably a good idea to have her Snap as a friend. Why is that? Why was that a good idea? Let's think. You're right, friends. Because he was by himself and that big, hungry, scary sea bass came, and he came and saved the day. That loud snap, snap, clickety, clackety, racket scared that sea bass away. All right? So friends, it's very important that we know those characters in the story. Because once we can identify those characters in a story, we can figure out where they are, and then we can figure out problem, solution, external character traits, internal character traits, and more information just from knowing the characters in the setting. We have to use our text evidence. We have to use our clues and become a detective to find those things, friends. And today and every day, I want you to see if you can identify the characters and the setting in a story. Let's take a look one more time at characters in a setting and setting. Characters are the people, animals, and creatures in the story. And the setting, again, is when and where the story takes place. So our objective today, boys and girls, was to be able to describe the characters and the setting in the story. We did that today with Goby, Snap, and Seabass in the story about Goby's noisy best friend. We found the setting and we found the characters. So friends, I want you to try to find your just right book and see if you can identify those characters and setting in the story. Then friends, if you find out that some of those characters are fairies, witches, or giants, or kings, or queens, you might notice that they are a fairy tale. And fairy tales, once again, are a type of folktale with magical characters, places, or events. So although Goby's noisy best friend was not a fairy tale, I was still able to find those characters and setting. And today and every day, I want you to find that in your reading. So I want you to find that just right book and a nice cozy place to read your just right book. And I want to see if you can find those things. Find the characters and the setting, maybe some external traits, what your character looked like the long legs and the snappy claws, the external traits, or the internal traits and how they behaved. Maybe you might even find the problem and the solution. So friends, I can't wait to meet you again and see all the great and hear about all the great and amazing books that you've read. So friends, it's your time to go and enjoy your reading. I'll see you next time. Goodbye.